Yeah.
Some good stuff.
I remember there's just some counter conversations sitting on that counter.
Yeah.
You know, just talking through like, what do you really think's going on here? And why are people the way they are?
Dude, during COVID?
Yeah. See, during COVID was different, man, because it was almost like everybody... Are we rolling, by the way? Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Braxton Gilbert, and you're tuning to another episode of Let's Keep Talking. Today, I am joined by a good friend, Tim Gautreaux.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Tim is an awesome dude, a cool thinker, and the owner of Nova, a coffee shop downtown, as well as Nova Market. And you guys are doing some pop-up stuff across the bay right now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool guy, and you're listening to a cool conversation.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, during COVID, the conversations... COVID, the conversations were different with people because you were already in this altered state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were already like meditatively, like you had space between the way things go and you're just kind of watching the world happen. So like the fingertip rubbing conversations and what's life really about?
Yeah.
They were much easier to enter with people.
Right. Yeah, I think...
We had a lot of those.
We did have a lot of those, and I think it had, like, there was space to have those conversations.
Because you had nowhere to be.
Yeah, everything was closed, but, you know, you were living downtown at the point.
Yeah.
Or at the time, and you would walk over, and we really weren't letting anybody in.
It's kind of like, what's up, bro?
Yeah.
Holla at me, dog.
I mean, I think you were probably coming in anyway.
Yeah.
You stand at the door, and you're just like...
My plan was to come in.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you test your relationship with people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their business is closed. Just go stand around the outside. You know what I mean? Yeah. How close are you with someone? Because you know, there's a lot of confusion. Does someone want to be your friend?
Yeah.
I don't know. Wait until they close the doors. 6 o'clock, they close their business doors. Just kind of go hang out, throw up a peace sign, and just see if they're like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thankfully you did.
Yeah.
And so I felt good when you let me in. I was like, hey, maybe I'm a little cooler than I thought I was.
No, I think there were a few people, for me specifically, because I was there, when we decided to do the curbside thing and run the coffee shop, which granted, I think we had just made one full year. Like we did a big, 1 year party in February.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later.
Shut down.
Yeah, everything started happening. So we were like, man, what a short run. Like, what a sad ending. At least we went out with a bang, that party was a ton of fun, and we were like, cool, we want to do more of this. And then quickly it was like, nobody's doing any of that.
Yeah.
So then we closed down and then decided to reopen and just do the curbside thing.
Yeah.
And we turned the front of the shop into just it kept our, storage, kept cups and lids and straws and stuff.
And it was you guys were bringing us the cars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did curbside. So it was a time where it's hard to kind of reassess or quantify the steps in which things happened, where it was we need to wear gloves, but nobody was wearing masks. We need to wear a mask, or we need to social distance or whatever.
Yeah. Bring that a little closer to you and drop it down just a little bit.
And I think
you just got to pull it. Yeah, you good.
I think we kind of reserved the right to have some people come in and have a cup of coffee. It preserved that
the soul of it.
Yeah, the reason why we were doing it.
Yeah, it's almost like I'll do it for free, so I'm not conducting business.
Yeah,
just come in and get a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
because I'm really just making you a cup so we can talk for a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Man, I think there's even something to that. What are you doing that maybe you make money, you get paid to do, but you would also just do for free?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or would you do what you're doing for free?
That's such an interesting topic.
Yeah.
And I know that I've been that way with my work doing fitness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it definitely was not that way for a while, the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It was especially if your job fits you.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like your soul is refreshed because what you're doing every day, it's damn, I feel better when I get home and the paycheck is whatever.
Yeah.
Even this podcast, doing this podcast, man, this is the game plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this shit for the next 20 years.
Dude, you just did 5 hours of therapy.
Yeah, 100%.
Or maybe in a way. I don't know what the other
my goal is to have the number one health podcast in the world.
Yeah.
You know, just about important topics that affect people's experiences. You know, and it's not like do push-ups, but like how do you feel about life and how can you reorient yourself to more enjoyment and not let time slip through your fingertips?
Yeah.
You know?
How old are you?
25.
Okay. I mean, I think even like coffee is a commodity, and even more so, like people will find caffeine if they wake up and they feel like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep or whatever. Like they're going to find something that gets them going.
Yeah.
So the idea of building a business, like a coffee business, and it being the majority of it being in person, like that's challenged during a time, even still, I mean, there's remnants, right? Like COVID is not just going to completely go away.
Yeah.
But I think I've observed that like we're like digressing in our human interaction. Like conversations aren't as important anymore. I watch people get exhausted.
Like during a conversation?
Yeah, like they'll just kind of check out, like, or even if it's, you know, maybe if it's contentious, even, I mean, maybe more so then, where they're just like, I don't have the mental energy to
for your ass.
yeah, or to ask questions that are like, what do you think about that? It's like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Just kind of check out.
Yeah. Conversations with people are also very, like for me, man, I'm grateful for, in one regard, I'm grateful for the political landscape and the difficulty that is how to navigate words and language around people.
Yeah.
Because on one front, it's depressing. At one point, it shrinks you up like shrink wrap, and you're like, I don't want to express how I feel or my perspective on things because I don't want to alienate someone or upset someone or make someone feel like the way they think is stupid. Mm-hmm. I don't want to step on any people's toes. But I felt like I got caught in that for a small lull of time, especially feeling intrigued by doing some type of content creation. It was like, well, I feel like if I'm going to do some type of content creation, I'm going to like then have to really uptake this idea of like, how do you produce things without biasing yourself towards one view or referencing people you derive inspiration from that are associated with a certain group of people that then you go, oh, well, this guy, you know, we can't listen to this guy anymore. And that seemed like the mountain of growing something that doing something well you love, i.e. a podcast, doing it consistently and then growing it to be successful in people's eyes is already challenging enough. Then add on top of that the tripwires of words that you might say, or you know, the inability for us to say like, we have different opinions on this issue, but I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree on, and maybe we could focus on that. Yeah. That was my saving grace, man. That's why I genuinely feel like I'm grateful for the acrobatic, the language acrobatics that I felt like I had to do, because then I realized actually the things that I'm afraid to disagree with people on are actually not things that villainize them or me. We mostly agree that people deserve to live a happy life. Yeah. People should take up some responsibility in their community, should participate in the well-being of other people. People should work really hard to create meaningful things for society. People deserve to be respected. Yep. Life is important. Yep. And when a fetus becomes a life, I think that's where our disagreement is. It's, you know, as a society, it's like, not that these people are horrible and they're ripping the soul out of America or vice versa. It's like, you think life is important? Do people have rights? Should people be able to do what they want with their body? People, like, yeah, we all agree on that. Yep. When's a fetus a life? It's like, that's a really specific question. Yeah. So that for me was like, maybe there's a light out of this dark tripwire tunnel where that's what we're talking about. Yeah. That's the intellectual disagreement. That's, you're not a bad person, I'm not. We just have a different opinion. Yeah, and that's like caused my heart to grow with a lot more acceptance and love for people of any opinion of an issue.
There's so much to that, because I think that like the way that we're raised shapes the way that we think, and we form opinions about things that we really never challenge, right? Like we just it's very like subconscious that you just operate through your day doing things that you just do because you've always done them. Yeah. So when you have a conversation and somebody says, "Why do you do that?" Like,
you're like, "Why? What do you mean?" Yeah,
well, you don't even really want to address it. It's like, maybe you remember your parents saying, like, if you ask like, "Hey, you know, or like my kids will say, can we go outside or whatever? It's hard to fight against the urge to say no, and when they say why, to respond with, because I said so.
Yeah.
Like, give them an explanation. So then with anything, like, why do we wear this shirt? Why do I wear these shoes? Like, you know, maybe not that specific.
Why
but
do you feel that way about that topic?
Oh, yeah. Feelings are huge, because when people get defensive and they feel like they have to justify their opinion, they put their guard up and they don't want to open that up and then reflect and ask questions like, why do I believe or have strong opinions on these social or political topics?
Yeah. That's
like,
that's such a beautiful question, man. Like, here's a great way I heard someone phrase it. I think it was Aubrey Marcus had a conversation with someone on his podcast about communication.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy gave a really awesome point, like a strategy. And very seldomly do people talk their talk, but very rarely do you hear someone give you like a really definitive strategy of a way to rephrase something that makes a difference in your conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing he said was, instead of asking people why you believe what you believe, just ask them what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of defending it, it just becomes an opportunity for them to share what they think is important in life and why, and then almost naturally begin to share supportive reasons for that, but not even on that focus. Like, you just share, like, what do you believe?
Mm-hmm.
That comes from a totally different place, because it's not like, you know, why do you think that? Because why implies blame.
Yeah.
You know, why do you do that? Well, why do you not do that, you idiot? You know, quit asking me.
I mean, I just think like a layer removed is people aren't even thinking about it. They're not even being asked the question, much less asking themselves. Yeah. And I think that's what happens first, is like, you have to feel that challenge to then process. Because I feel like, you know, maybe you wake up enlightened. Maybe it's just like something that goes off and you're like, I think different, which people have those experiences. But I think for the most part, it's a process.
Yeah.
You
100%.
You feel something, some kind of conviction that's like, that doesn't sit right with me anymore. Or somebody asked pitched it in a good way, presented it in a good way, and you're like, huh.
I want to be, and then you go like, I, as an adult, have learned to want to think as intelligently as I can about situations and about my stances. And I've begun to take on a responsibility, not a fearful responsibility, but what I believe to be a mature responsibility, that my opinions help shape the collective opinion about topics which affect people. And so it's important that I have a sense of moral obligation to choose something that is not based off of something I already agree, so I'm rationalizing it, but something that is true and can be supported.
Yep. And
a big part of that is being willing to open your heart to counter arguments and not think, if you have a good point, then my argument's out the window. Yeah. Well, you just have a good point. I'm glad you've got a sturdy opinion about this. Yeah. And it's not just Alabama or Auburn, you know, if you live in Alabama. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just an approach to be comfortable with disagreeing.
Oh yeah.
Like, just being comfortable with, like, we disagree, and then the hope would be that we'd walk away and say, why do I disagree with that?
I respect that person.
Yeah.
They seem to think differently.
Yeah.
And they're intelligent.
But then some people might be like, I believe in this so strongly, and we disagree, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And not have to be like, well, I need to change my mind.
Yeah.
Or make it, you know, to where you need to change your mind. Like, so what?
The us versus them is like such a wrong layer to normal life, you know, in America, right? Like, how we feel and our desires and our hopes for life, you don't ever hear those. You don't ever hear those as a union, as a shared, like, you know, turns out everybody, with the exception of a couple people, really want the people they interact with to feel respected, and they want to feel respected too.
Sure.
You know, and people don't want people to go hungry.
Yeah.
And people want to make sure that people don't have a space to exist and a place to sleep at night. If there's any social programs that we can help that don't demoralize the structure of abundance that has been useful, then we like to do that. If there's unfair advantages that would affect your child coming into this world, that they can't play the game and be able to succeed in ways that are meaningful to them because of some structures that are biased towards people of a certain group.
Yep.
We'd like to see those changed. But when you say it like that, and it's not, you're not weaponizing a certain group of people or an ideology, then a lot of people upvote that. And then you can say, like, we're pretty close to the same feeling on this.
Yeah.
Now, how do we feel about, you know, what's the intellectual disagreement, you know?
I mean, I hope personally that that's where we digress, like, as a people group. Like, I think a lot of the things that have been presented, you know, via politics, it's kind of going back to what we said, where people are just routine. They're very subconscious. They're not thinking about why they're doing what they're doing, down to what they wear, where they shop, where they eat. It's just, this is where we go.
A lot of it's chunked. It's just who you do.
It's a package deal, and it comes from the way you were raised and so many different things, who you hang out with, which is why I think that, like, I'm very enamored, like, in working in a coffee shop, I see a variety of different people. So I love stereotypes because I think we actually work very hard at them. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean?
Well, I think, again, the way that we dress, the way that we look, who we interact with, you could play a game of, like, tell me a few different bands that you listen to, or show up, you know, to this event wearing whatever, and I could probably figure out like 5 or 6 or 7 other things about you.
Yeah.
You've stereotyped yourself, not in a negative way. I think it's just who we are as human beings. Like, we want to belong. We want to fit into something.
Yeah.
Which then when you start to add these more trivial layers like politics, and you have to have a stance on, you know, who you're voting for and everything that comes with it, then is where I think, you know, us as humans, we start to point fingers and isolate or disassociate with differences in opinions, when in reality, if, you know, like I said earlier, hopefully we digress to a point to where we just look at everybody and just believe the best.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody, like, I don't think everyone in the world is a good person, but I'm probably going to be better off assuming that you are than, you know, go into it with just like, you know, guns loaded, just, you know. Just hardened. Yeah, look at you and be like, you're probably this, this, and this. And it's like,
you're the bacteria that's infecting this world.
Why would you go about it that way? Which I think is kind of where we've been.
Yeah.
Everybody's, you know, really agenda driven. And it's like, yeah, but what if you just sat down and had a conversation?
See, that's right there, man. That's a skill. Like, being able to talk with someone, and first off, the self-awareness to know that you are not the moral standard. Mm-hmm. You believe that your stances are moral. You believe they're the best idea. Mm-hmm. But you're not the divine. Yep. You're not the answer. You aren't the thing in human form, you know, walking around espousing your philosophies, hoping you can gain enough followers to change the world finally. Yep. You're a person who is hopefully intelligently looked through the options, made a decision on what you think is best as a sense of responsibility to the collective, to improve the experience that your children have and your friends have. Right. The ability to have the conversation and do that is like, it's like being able to let down your defenses and feel really confident. I think the reason people can't do that is because they're afraid to have it wrong. Mm-hmm. What if I'm wrong about my God, my religion, my stance on this? What if I'm wrong? Does that make me an idiot? Do I look stupid? Does that mean my, you know, like, I do not like to harp on religion being a negative thing. I'm not an anti-religion person, but I do think it would be, I would be avoiding a topic to be discussed if I didn't involve it in this, and to say that, like, your religion of sorts, even within a Christian religion, which I'm most familiar with, there's divisions, there's, you know, subgroups that believe certain things. So we do understand that even within a certain philosophy, a certain religion, there are different schools of thought and you with your own intelligence can decide what you think something means and what you don't. I think there's a fear that allowing people to think for themselves is the first step to hell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the first step to utter chaos.
Yeah, which is somewhere in the core of the earth with a man and a pitchfork just prodding you while you burn the whole time.
Yeah, finally. You know?
Well, I think it's safe for people. I agree with you. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think until you start to ask yourself why, it's a safe bet. The same way that, like, again, people feel like they're in their wheelhouse by wearing whatever they're comfortable in. And you're right. When you're being recorded, you want to be careful to not, like, acknowledge something that would minimize, like, that's less than. Like, I think people choose what they choose because they're comfortable. And then you have this very small percentage of people that stand out and they go against the norm. And then from the people that are most comfortable form an opinion of, like, I don't like that guy. And you'd be like, well, why? Because they're different.
Yeah.
They're different. So the same with, you know, at least I think, my opinion, the same as with politics, religion. You know, you can look throughout basically everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, and you're a part of some kind of group. Whether it's, you know, going to a gym, you can find community there. Being a regular at Nova, you can find community there. So before you know it, there's a good chance you're going to look alike, talk alike, you know, act alike. So I think, to your point about religion, it's crazy because Christianity has many denominations within the same end-all belief, right? That, you know, God is God and Jesus is the Son of God and you're going to heaven, and there's all these nuances, but then legalistic differences as to, like, well, you can't, you know, do this or say this or drink this or say that word, like, whatever it is. You make rules that people feel safe playing along with. For the same end result.
Yeah, where you feel really comfortable. Well, I think safe is probably the best word for it, like out of danger.
Yeah.
Because if you're wrong, at least you're all wrong. You know, at least you're not alone. At least you were only following what everyone else said.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
I'd rather go my whole life
believing
that this is the way than to come to the end and realize that I missed out.
And that is the thing that anyone listening to this episode, I want to encourage people to do, is not to believe something particularly, not to choose the right thing, but to see about being as mindful as you can about your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've said it a couple times already in this episode, the feeling the uprise of a sense of moral responsibility to participate in the cultivation of your beliefs, and whether that be religious, and I think ultimately that's probably one of the first outer frameworks to the way you start to create a hierarchy of value structures, you know, but then also to social issues and to gain a distance, if you can, away from what everyone's telling you, you know, because when you look at someone from the opposing team, religion, party, social group, if you if you don't really understand the reasons that you believe what you believe, and the value of community and the value of a personal framework of interpreting the world and its events, if you don't really have that benefit for yourself, you'll judge the person. How could they believe that? How could who believe anything? You believe things. Why do you believe things?
Right.
And what, you know, like the amount of, there's no compassion for people of the opposite opinion.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so rough because whatever happens at the end of this, they were real. You're real.
Yeah.
You know, and that interaction you had with a real human being was real. And they felt those feelings and they were impacted by your words.
Yep.
And maybe the words of defense and strength and protection aren't as beautiful as the words of inclusion and consideration and listening.
Yeah.
Maybe my argument from the way I view the world is strong enough to listen to your opinions.
I mean, I feel like from that perspective, it simplifies things. and that's like a whole different digression, because while something that has like your life in a box, essentially, like built around Christianity specifically, I can't speak to anything else. I do think there's similarities, because there's an ultimate
kick that music up a little bit, Christian.
There's a guideline of sorts, a map that is allowing you every day that you wake up to, be ambitious towards something, or do better, or be better. All the while you're eliminating people that have different opinions from your life. But then even more so, when that's the only circle you run in, you're not interacting with these other people.
Yeah.
And simply other people by like the people that don't attend your church every Sunday.
Yeah.
More specifically, working at a church full time.
You work for a church, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that if you're down for it.
Did you grew up in church?
Mm-hmm. I was a church guy.
Yeah.
I was a real church guy.
Your family grew up in church?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was church. You know, it was Wednesday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And, it got into me. Like, it got into my bones.
Mm-hmm.
It was the, like...
How long have you not been in church?
I'd say 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that, I'd say that, yeah, that's about the same time that I was like, I started to feel a sense of distance and awareness that what I believed wasn't necessarily completely one size to fit the way that I needed to navigate my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe there were some tweaks to my religion that I could make that were more inclusive to the way I felt, that would allow me to be healthier and more developed as an individual.
Yep.
And then it began to become more of okay, so maybe religion is an important component of life.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same way I say my goal for this podcast is to be the #1 health podcast in the world.
Yeah.
That is going to happen or may not happen, but the orientation towards that goal is very important and very necessary. And so maybe the existence of the ultimate God or something isn't as important. Okay, maybe my reason for having that was to answer my existential dread, which maybe will never go away unless I just very lightly agreed to, because I don't have any near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, or anything that any divine presence has ever been like, hello, my name is, Jeremy or something.
To convince you otherwise.
Yeah, so for me, I'm like, for me, I don't know if God exists. I don't have any reason to believe that there is a definite God. Mm-hmm. And so if I did, I would just be like closing the door because I was afraid of like this feeling of loneliness in this huge space. Yeah. Which is kind of fun at times.
I think it's just far more, for me at least, it's far more infinite than that. And I think that my perspective has changed in terms of maybe what we've experienced in church in a similar way, where it's like, it's just bigger than that, whatever it is.
What do you
don't know.
When you say it, you mean a God?
I think spirituality. I think there is a sense of being beyond us that things that you can't really explain. You kind of just put them in the category of like, I don't know.
Just file that away with a big question mark.
And there are people way smarter than us that chase that. They, dedicate their lives to understanding, how we're made up as a spiritual being. And so to think about my experience, fast forwarded, like my dad was a pastor. I, worked in church. I did music in churches, mega churches. To
Houston?
Dallas. Yep. To kind of where I am now, and it's more of just like a constant question, like daily, just asking like gentle questions, because I think I didn't have the best experience in some facets, but overall I didn't have a bad experience. So, I just think it's bigger than being able to package it in a building run by humans based on a book. Yeah. Like in my argument would be, if God is as big as the Christian church says that he is, how could you reduce all of that into a book? I don't disagree with it necessarily, but I think that like there are just some things that you won't be able to go back to the text and say, well, that's why.
Yeah.
Because we continue to progress. We
Yeah.
evolve in a way that, like, I don't know, if you're going to choose a path of spirituality or believing that there's something greater than you and your path is the Christian version,
Mm-hmm.
I would just ask the question, like, don't you think it's bigger than that?
Yeah.
And then if it's not, at least you would start asking questions like from within the context
Yeah.
of what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. Don't you think it's bigger than that? Because
Yeah.
I definitely feel that. I definitely understand that, and that's something that I have felt an interesting return to as I swung out of Christian religion into atheism and just sprawled out into the nihilistic nothingness of the world
Yeah.
and the infinite potential to be whatever I want, because ultimately it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then I felt very depressed
Mhm.
because I thought, well, if there's no meaning to anything,
Mm-hmm.
then what?
Yep.
And then I realized, okay, well, there is meaning, and it's always just been that maybe there's not an inherent, definite meaning to life
Mm-hmm.
that you can find anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a personal meaning that you derive from your experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe as scary as it is, you are out here a little bit on your own
Mm-hmm.
and not completely dissociated from your culture, your people, and your friends and family, but the meaning for your life is somewhat for you to discover.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you apply meaning to things.
Yep.
And that depression went to this liberation of sorts of, okay, so I can decide what's meaningful to me,
Mm-hmm.
or I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Well, but then the responsibility starts to kick in of going, okay, I want a good life. I want a good life for the time that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So that means doing some multiple goal front management of I want to be really happy today and I also want to be really happy tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my current situation that I'm working through right now is getting more I feel like I'm very love avoidant. Like when I get into a relationship and I start to feel love, I'm like, get me out of here, baby.
Yeah.
And
Is that like a commitment thing or?
it's a very layered conversation.
Sure.
I'm very happy to get into it, but
Yeah.
to keep it on religion just for a minute, is I want to have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have warmth. You know,
Mhm.
I want a family.
Yeah.
I see your kids. I think it's awesome.
Yep.
And I think that there is a small glimpse of some maturity or something in that area that I
Sure.
think I'm inspired by, or I
Yeah.
am inspired by, and I think I can see it. But I also want to get away from her because she scares me.
Mm-hmm.
Girl scares me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, okay, maturity, longer timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a dragon to fight. Maybe this is an opportunity to go through. Maybe
Yep.
this is the enlightenment is through the darkest part of the forest that appears to you, you know?
Yeah.
So then it's like, all right, well, how do I transverse these challenges? Well, some form of compass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait a second. So God,
Yeah.
you know, is like this ultimate hierarchy of the goal in life or the meaning to life that
Sure.
I assign.
Yep.
And my dad's God doesn't necessarily mean my God, and my neighbor's God isn't my. Okay, so I choose my God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. So then religion comes back into play.
Yeah.
So I've recently begun to I've recently begun to read the Bible again
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate the story of Jesus,
Yeah.
because I have gotten past the idea that, oh, that's not true, or it is true.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, read the story.
Yeah.
There's a story of Jesus, and there's a
Mhm.
guy that gave his life up for his brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
and there's this compassion. And while people were hanging him on a cross, he said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Wow.
Yeah.
Apart from from what I think Christians are or not, or should be or not, whatever I think, that's a really cool story about
Yeah.
a guy. And then I think, okay, maybe that is pointing to something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe Buddha, it says all the suffering is in the mind, and you
Mhm.
think you exist, therefore you suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting.
Right.
You know, now when I close my eyes and I think about God, it's more of a group of people.
Hmm.
You know, and the Buddha's kind of laughing at it, and Jesus is still kind of crying a little bit because he loves everyone here.
Yeah.
You know, and Satan's like, it's all in the hedonism, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's where I'm starting to think, okay, God, maybe I'm open to the ideas that the divine, the ultimate direction that brings out of you your most beautiful self could be nestled in between the pages of the Bible and could be deep in the philosophies of Buddhism.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the two major religions I've gone through. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe to clarify on my previous statement, because I'm sure somebody will listen to this that knows me, and you know, and not that I feel like I owe anybody anything, because I don't think that I'm at a place right now where, kind of like you said, you went, you know, through on a few wild rides to figure out what you believe. And I think it's less like of an education as to why my belief system is shifting, and more of just a feeling. And then maybe I'll get back to a point to where it's education. Maybe it's back to reading. But I think it's okay to have sort of like, this doesn't feel right anymore. This doesn't feel like me. And then the questions that you're asking to maybe bring clarity to yourself. And because it is day to day, it's moment to moment, I want to wake up tomorrow and feel like I have a purpose that's bigger than me. Yeah. But I think, you know, allowing yourself time to figure out what that is, and
very good.
It might be a long time, as long as you're not, you know, cutting down other people's belief systems and, you know, pointing fingers at, well, that's wrong, how could you do that?
Yeah.
Then I think you're in a safe space, because like you're referencing, like the life of Jesus, it is a beautiful story. Like it is quite literally the way that we should treat each other, right? But it's all the other things that are tied to it. You know, maybe not to go down this path, but I think I saw this thing on Instagram yesterday. It's a guy, he's kind of famous in the Christian church realm, and deconstruction right now is really popular.
I heard someone mention that to me.
Millennials specifically
Using
that grew up in church that are doing essentially what we're doing, but in a way that is very, I think it's toxic towards like the organization and less about religion itself. And people that are still in the church are fighting back. Yeah. Because they're like, well, the church didn't hurt you, a human did.
And that's not
guy
Jesus.
Did. That's not Jesus. So
you're right.
My question to that, would be like, well, if it's all run by humans, then find me one that's perfect or better. And then they would say, well, there's no such thing as a perfect church. But then you look at the life of Jesus, and he would not operate a church, at least I don't think so, the way that churches are operated today. Because people do get hurt. They get manipulated. They get taken advantage of. And I think my mind races in areas and kind of thinks through scenarios of like what I was involved in, and I'm just like, I don't think that was good. Yeah. You know, like building a big business off of what is essentially supposed to be free. It's the hard. Gospel.
You know, I think you could see a parallel in capitalism. Yeah. And because there's a phrase that I return to often, it's capitalism has no soul. And I think, you know, I have read the book The Basics of Economics by Thomas Sowell quite a few times and enjoy economics. I like the idea of people being taken care of. I like the idea of wealth being us using our technological advances to fix hunger. You know, it's like, why are we so rich and we can't do that? Like I don't know. It's a whole complex topic. But the idea that capitalism has no soul, it's like it's a very present, mindful, even like prayerful, like very honoring thing to begin to look at what you do and try to split it down for the purpose of it itself, and then the climbing of the social structure through financial gain that you can get, because you sell a fantastic taco. You make a great taco. You actually do make a great taco. I'm just using a random example, but yeah, these are fantastic tacos.
That was Claire.
Yeah. Oh, Claire. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wait, you're talking about COVID?
I'm talking about front yard tacos.
Yeah, I don't make those.
Yeah, well, I know you don't. I mean, more like your company does.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
the front yard tacos, if you haven't eaten downtown Mobile, the best. There's a thing called the front yard spread. It's much these tater tots, man. Tater tots that get queso on it.
Yeah.
It's really good. Anyways, you make a great taco. You make a great thing, and someone enjoys it. And it feels so good to give. It feels so good to create out of the resources available, out of your natural gifts. I'm good with a knife. I'm good with talking. Maybe a podcast is suiting.
Yeah.
To create something that people go, wow, that's refreshing,
An experience.
Yeah, but then it's like, ooh, I could sell a lot of tacos.
Yeah.
And then I could fund the deepest desires in my dark psychology. I could feel powerful, very powerful.
Sure.
The more my wealth grows, the more options I have to express both personality sides.
Sure.
Generosity, and then also the ability to do what I want without consequences.
Yeah.
And then like these other little personality traits start sticking their head up, and they're like, we could have it all, And then you're looking at your taco like,
yeah, the
guy's like, can I have it? And you're like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me hand it off.
Zoom back in.
But it went to the parallel. The reason I bring it up is because within church, I love the idea of sharing Jesus.
Yeah.
Like I recently, I'm not sure about this. I recently, though, like I said, have started to reapproach the story of Jesus Christ and not to reject Jesus. People say, what do you think about Jesus? I'm like, now, in the last few weeks, like, I think it's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
I think he's a great person. If he existed, I think he was fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I was driving by a side preacher on the street the other day, just saying things about Jesus and turn or burn kind of thing. And I felt this like, this guy. And I pulled into the parking lot to watch him in my nice prideful stance of being an intelligent agnostic, and I thought, this dude, goodness, he's so stupid. And then I felt in my heart this like weight of, who are they talking about? You're kind of holding on to this I'm not a Christian thing. Are you a Christian?
Yeah.
Maybe you are. Maybe you do follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. Maybe there are people, maybe there's a part of you hold on to so deeply, and it's the part of Braxton that's not a Christian.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's heavy. That's what you're feeling right now. And so as I let that go, and I realized that what they're saying might be different from the way I describe Jesus Christ, but I agree with them. I think Jesus is awesome.
Yeah.
So they're saying some other things that are a little bit weird, but if someone talked about my brother, and said, oh, Garrison is XYZ, I know the guy they're talking about.
Yep.
I felt it.
Yep.
So their sayings about him are like, maybe a little off, but I know the guy. So I'm not going to reject the person I love, the person I'm inspired by, because of people's reiteration of the story,
Right.
But as I begin to listen to them talk, I thought, damn, I felt this love in my heart grow. And I felt not like I was against them. I supported them.
Yeah.
I almost thought about getting them water.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a little hot
Right.
here, but that's the return to.
Yeah.
I make all that to say that the story of there is a person who lived, whether it happened or not, a person who lived a life with no sin. He did not hurt anyone. And then he took a sinner's death or criminal's death as a way to show the utmost compassion. How beautiful is that? And is that not inspirational?
Yeah.
The part where the gospel, the good news, becomes a weekly thing is odd.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just a news story. And then a book. You can have it here.
Yeah.
Read about it as often as you want, derive inspiration from it. But now we have like a camp, and now we have like a VBS, and then now we have certain like colleges within the thing. We have like a production label.
Yeah.
Then we have this weekly ordeal, and it's like, what are we like? Is this just a for-profit Hillsong situation?
Yeah.
Or
well,
what?
that and I think that's what I'm saying, in the sense of like, I agree with you. I think the story is very compelling. I think it's much more than that as well. But I think it's a great model for us as humans to latch hold of. Like, in any religion, it's associated with a man and then a God or a being to basically represent what that looks like to pursue that God.
Yeah.
If it's that vast and our version is right, then you would have to completely dismiss any other option. If we were all going to the same place, right? Like we all just get like the rapture happens and you're like, oh shit, that guy was a Buddhist, or that guy, like,
Yeah.
you know, which in the context of like having a specific belief, I don't know if anybody thinks that it works that way.
That you
I
all
think
go
that,
separate directions based on your God?
yes, there's like different heavens reserved for different religions.
Yeah.
But I think like you're exactly right. When you start to monetize on the good news, like something that you should it should ooze out of you if that's what you truly believe, based on the pretense that Jesus, the human, was a perfect person. So then now we're relying on humans who are imperfect to replicate or tell that story, to be inspiring in a way for you who may walk through the door. You don't believe in it, and then there's just a really good talking head that says some nice things, and you go like, oh,
This is
I'm gonna
inspirational.
reconsider. That's all it is. It's inspirational. But then you come back next week, and then you're buying into the bigger program, and then you're buying into that brand of Jesus and Christianity, and that business is simultaneously scaling because it's opening new locations, and they hire all these people, and it's like, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Owning a business, right? You got to drum up new business.
I mean, hey, I'm looking for lost souls all over the world.
Yeah,
baby.
but like, I think what makes it hard is like, you have a tangible product. You're like, hey, if you do this, you will see a life change.
Yeah.
If you buy into this, you will be rewarded for the work that you put in. It's not all in vain. And you watch the light go off, and people are like, wow, I feel better. I sleep better. Like, my body's changing, whatever.
And
so then
ultimately,
it
I don't want
becomes
you
a
to hire
lifestyle.
me. Ultimately,
Right.
I want you to do this.
Yeah.
I want to be out of here.
So in the context of making a business off of a religion, it's hard to gauge that life change.
The return on investment?
Yeah, the return on investment, because what do we have? We have these mega church pastors who have affairs and whatever else. So then you present a whole different slew of problems, because we got to get rid of that guy. He's bad for business.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't talk to him anymore. He ends up somewhere else writing a book, like my failures. And the whole pretense of what you were teaching was
a book.
Yeah, it makes money. But the whole idea was that we're supposed to be inclusive and love everyone, and we're not perfect, and we all slip up until somebody does.
Yeah, why'd you fire the pastor for having an affair? That was the premise of the whole thing.
Yeah, you probably 50% of your congregation has dealt with something similar, whether their parents or them or somebody they know.
Yeah.
Like, it might be better for business if you keep him around and watch him rebuild.
Jesus would probably be like, that's a cool church.
Yeah.
If the pastor openly said, like, yeah, that's me, man.
Well, specifically Christianity, we like to put King David on a pedestal. The guy was a shitty guy.
Yeah.
Like, to our standards, like, had people murdered, affairs, like, just wasn't a good guy. And then at the end of the story, he's a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I filter that through, like, man, maybe there's something more to this very pretty packaged version of life that's trying to be perfect and
behavior and adherence. And
yeah, check all the boxes. I'm not saying go rogue, but I would say, like, you make some mistakes, and if grace is grace, then it's better to live in that realm. And again, to qualify, not as a permission to just go do whatever you want, but I think that it's less pressure in a way to take it in stride. Ask yourself those hard questions about, raising kids. What are we teaching them? What do we believe?
Become courageous.
Yeah.
Being willing to venture out from the shelter of your belief structure and wonder out loud, what is the best way to go about spending my time in life with my children, with my friends and family, with my significant other?
Yeah.
What are the ways to go about this? And can I put myself in a position where I am the most highest voice in my life, inspired by what I reach for to be the divine of sorts? And then that's what's interesting, man. Like, I think Bill Burr has a funny skit about this where he's like, the reason I have a hard time with religion is because when I go to church, I just can't get past it. This is just some guy. It's just some dude up there.
Yeah.
Tell me how to live. And what's interesting is I've got a close family member that has not been in church in years on purpose, stepped away. And they're like, I wanted to deepen my relationship with God.
Yep.
And it's interesting because one thing they told me was, I feel closer to God, and I feel like I can understand what God's telling me less because I'm away. Like I'm not clear on what God wants.
Yeah.
And it opened up an interesting quality to our conversation to say, I wonder if what God is telling you is more so just the echoes of the organization. Wonder if it's what the pastor is telling you and the leaders in the church and just the echo chamber of sorts. Yeah. And I wonder, God, like in the Bible, the kingdom of God is like a man who finds buried treasure in a field and goes and sell all he has to buy the field. And then, he's got it for himself. Maybe God is in the deep, long, quiet reflection. Maybe that's where you find God. Yeah. And it's from sitting really far away from everybody else's opinion of God. Because they don't hold the truth. And this is where it's more empowering, I think, for me this way, is to believe that fundamentally inside of you is the divine, is the most beautiful expression of love and compassion. Yeah. Also, the opposite is true, so we don't get carried away and naive. But that is like I feel so much more trust and safety around someone who says, my God is inside of me. And I see parts of that God that I resonate with in stories or in religion or even mostly in this religion, but it's inside. And I don't think most people ever get the chance to find the space away from the truth that people tell them to the inner truth. And here's the thing, if you're afraid of that, if you go, what the hell? Yeah. Try it and just see what happens. You might
it makes me want to put the pieces together just from the start of this conversation, because I think that's just another facet of people putting on a mask of thinking of the image that comes to my mind is going to church all the time is just like commercials, like static. Like it's so much noise that you don't even have margin to ask yourself, what do I believe? Like so much information, so many messages and, sermons that you're like, who are we processing this stuff with? Who's talking about it? And then someone would say well, we have small groups and we have areas in our ministry for that. And it's like, but really, do you? Because if God is inside you and it's a reflection of who we are, we're made in his image, we're a reflection, then like I said earlier, you're better off believing the best in everyone, because you ultimately know that I would let you down. I would fail you in some way, and you don't have to be surprised by that. But if we're imperfect, then I have another chance. And you can say, yeah, man, no big deal. Get back up again. Yeah. We'll figure it out. Yeah. Versus what I feel like, I'll make a bold statement. I think Christian churches created cancel culture, because I think it's really convenient to disassociate yourself with people that don't align with what you believe, versus taking the time to seek them out and be that nurturer, that comforter, that person that's like, maybe I don't agree with what you're saying, and maybe,
But the reason they create is because it's impossible to do that. Yeah. It's
easier to cut them off and move on and be like,
because we're not looking for an honest conversation where both people respect it. We're looking to find the truth, and I have it, you don't. Yeah. That kind of thing. Yeah. It's like, dude, what the hell are we doing, man? Like that, the statement is an interesting one. The Christians created, the contemporary church that we have now is what created cancel culture, because the ability for mutual respect and agree to disagree. Yeah. And honestly, I respect you for your disagreement and see where you come from. And I can empathize with that. Yeah. Is very hard when the individual argument points are supporting this giant idea that ultimately holds your eternal damnation or reward. Yeah. And it's like, any way that you start to damage my greater philosophy scares the shit out of me.
Well, if you were truly going to pursue a relationship with God, the only representation that we have is relationships with human beings.
And yourself.
And they're hard. Perfect. It's hard.
Like if
it's very difficult, and it has challenges, and you're going to have internal conflict or external conflict. You're going to disagree on a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that you can't love that person or yourself, right?
Yeah, and you think, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean, but you said
yourself,
relationship with yourself. Yeah. Just because you're not where you want to be doesn't mean that you can't love yourself. Yeah. Because I think that you have to see yourself as who you want to be, and maybe it is. Maybe we are that divine creation and we're reflections of God, because we are capable of doing literally whatever we put our mind to. It's like I tell people, a small example, even, training our baristas with coffee, like, we're not coffee experts. I just know more about coffee than you do. You know more about fitness than I do. Are you a fitness expert? To a lot of people, yes. But you probably don't see yourself as that. You see yourself as like continually learning. Yeah. So if I wanted to, study horticulture or like martial arts, it's available to me. I can be that if I want to. And I think such is with, I kind of lost my train of thought, but just like if we are divine beings and we're unhappy with what we're doing or who we are, we can be whoever we want and do whatever we want. We're capable, actually.
And
in most cases.
In most cases, yeah. I think it's not about forgetting your God. I think it's not about whatever happens, sure, it happens. You know, if you end up deciding to change your religious views or whatever, sure, so be it. But it's so much about being less afraid. Taking because one thing I did for a while is I tried to dismantle other people's belief structures. I stopped believing in God necessarily in an atheistic, nihilistic world, and I decided that everyone who else believed in God was intellectually at zero.
Yeah, they're just wrong.
They're just wrong. And I don't believe that anymore. I think there are a lot of reasons people believe in God, and I think there's a lot, again, back to the whole, like, the podcast being number one in the world. It's a beautiful orientation, true or not, I don't know, but it's a beautiful thing to have. And I started to see people's spiritual life as a vase of sorts, and it's fragile. It's important to you to have something special that gives life meaning. And I genuinely just, regardless of your religious affiliation, I think it's really beneficial to go inward, to think, what is the best way I could develop as well as support my fellow man? Maybe to learn a lot about a human, I got one,
Yeah.
What's better, raising a kid with open heart and an open mind, and to see every opportunity, everything that happens, as much as you can, as a learning experience, to learn more about this interesting thing called life.
Yeah.
Or a resistance to love that I feel in my heart. Isn't that where a beautiful lesson lies? Of I wonder why I'm that way, but I wonder about this thing of being a human being that makes human beings that way. And then how much more of a beautiful wisdom and knowledge do you have as someone who has not subscribed to a certain philosophy with absolute dedication, but for someone who has lived their life with an open heart and open mind and allowed experiences to pass through them and cultivate in them a unique perspective.
Yeah. I think it's because it's hard. It's difficult.
Scary.
It's way more difficult and way more risky to be that way. Because if you do that, then you're just going to keep evolving. And who wants to do that? I'd rather just be who I am and be comfortable and predictable, make the same amount of money, reliable. People look for reliable vehicles and a house in the safest neighborhood. Like, we are created to basically be on autopilot.
Yeah.
I think we wake up and we just accept what's given to us. It's a 9 to 5. It's income. It's like whatever. I just watch people, they don't care anymore. So to live a life like what you're describing, the reason why most people don't do it is because it's difficult.
Yeah, it's really, it brings in some uncertainty into your experience. And that, like, uncertainty is, I don't know the exact recipe for wonder, but the uncertainty is an ingredient in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder about this. An optimistic uncertainty of sorts. And it's hard to be someone that has the quality of being wonder and being wondering about the world and being open to experiences in life, being open to different experiences. Maybe your child has a different perspective.
But it's so rewarding, though.
It's beautiful.
To interject, like I think about, I have such a good relationship with my immediate family, my brother, my mom, my dad, obviously
It's awesome.
my wife, raising kids. But I'm able to understand that is not it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
Like, it's because we have hard conversations and we're constantly challenging each other in ways that, you know, on many different topics that we might not agree, especially initially, but we leave closer than we were when we started.
Yeah.
Because I think you're presenting something that's just, it's unorthodox. Like, yeah, so many scenarios of just whatever it is, whatever the map of life, the American dream is just kind of, it's in front of you. And so if you go against that, or you desire more, and more not being, you know, money, maybe it's a deeper relationship, or
Not being afraid of love.
yeah, intimacy in a way that's not just, you know, what most people define that as.
Or even having intimacy. That's one of the toughest parts about love for me, is there's like being intimate with my partner has no intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like that for me. I separated that. I separated my heart from my penis, and being sexual with someone is like, I can only do that with people I can only do that with people I'm not close to, because it was like a part of my personality that was kicked out when I was young, you know? And so I'm working very hard to reintegrate that and reconnect the idea of intimacy with an affection towards someone, you know? Let's pick up at the idea of family relationships and how that's important and helpful, so we can take a quick pee break.
Cool. I mean, it's like you're saying, maybe just on your spiritual evolution, you know, when we evolve, there is sometimes like pain that you have to feel to, you know, form a different opinion.
Yeah. Real quick, because we just picked back up, the audio just started. We were talking, I just said briefly, we sat down, about how good it feels to be able to talk about things that used to be difficult and used to be charged with a lot of desire to disrupt. And this system was painful to me growing up this way, and it hurt me. And so now when I talk about it, I try to dismantle people, and it feels really nice to have a conversation with Tim about it and be able to talk about it as a genuinely hoping the best for people regardless of the outcome.
Yeah. And on that topic, I think that like, you know, when you reached out and kind of offered up some suggestions on where the conversation might go, I think that is such is life when you reflect on, you know, your earliest memory to 25, 35. Things that shift your mindset are typically challenging.
Yeah.
Like, it might cause some hurt or some pain, or, you know, for you to kind of reset and, you know, say like, it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes us longer to learn something, to learn a lesson. There was a guy that came into Nova downtown, older gentleman. He was in his 80s and just very complimentary of what we were doing. And like, in that business, the service industry, you have people that say really hurtful things, or like reviews or whatever, and you're just like, man, that's deflating. And then the majority, they really don't say anything. They just continue to support you. They're not going to leave a review. And then there's this group that they are like sent there by maybe the broader spiritual being to catch your attention and be intentionally complimentary and encouraging. And one that I can think of was this older gentleman talking about, I don't even know how we got to it so quick, but I was like, something to the effect of like, he's like, yeah, I'm 80 something. And I was like, hey, me and you, like, we think the same, right? Like, you still think like I do, like 30s, because when I think about myself today, like, I'm like, I'm still 18 or younger in my head.
Youthful in terms of the
energy.
energy.
Like nothing's changed. And he was like 100%. And I said, well, you know, what's some quick advice? Like, as I'm handing him his drink, which again, he was like, this is awesome. You know, Mobile needs this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, just, it was a great conversation. His advice was, evaluate where you are today and realize that life is about learning lessons. How many teachers is it going to take you to learn the lesson? He said, my only regret is that it took me too many teachers.
That's really cool.
And it's kind of just like, if you reflect on that, you say, yeah, we find ourselves in situations constantly that present the same, like, oh, I got to deal with this again. Like, whatever it is. It could be as simple as like, you just can't get your shit together and you're always running late.
Yeah.
You're going to get fired enough times or piss off enough people that eventually you'll get it. How long is it going to take you to get that?
Or communicating with a loved one and being able to say it in a way that you can find common ground.
Yeah.
And you go, why don't people just fucking listen to me?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's an opportunity to learn to communicate better.
Right. Yeah.
That's a really cool piece of advice.
I gleaned from it, and I'm like, man, I can think of just chapters in my life where I'm like, oh, I thought I learned that lesson.
Yeah.
And maybe I got a version of it, and it's kind of like a sub-chapter.
Yeah.
Or like to be continued.
Yeah.
Like there's something bigger to this that you need to revisit and address before you can move on to the next phase of life.
It's such a beautiful thing, man, because it's a discipline to not become resentful in life.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it's the same homework you just did last week. You know,
Yeah.
I just learned I swear I'm learning how to communicate, and it's still not working.
Yep.
You know, or like the phrase "new level, new devil." Like, you mean there's another level of thoughtful communication? You know, like, do I ever arrive? And then you get back to the 80-year-old guy saying life is about lessons. And there's really, you know, an interesting perspective for me. I hope this doesn't digress too much, but interesting perspective from me that's inspiring is that there's not a whole lot to personally be gained from having a life other than the experiences. And those experiences can evolve and become nuanced and different.
Yeah.
And only will they if you accept the teachings and you allow the flow of life and its interesting suffering, pain, difficulty, repetition, and beautiful moments. If you allow that to be a beautiful play in front of you and go, wow, I'm so glad I got tickets to this.
Well, it's like you said, and maybe to simplify it, like life is, maybe, right? Like I don't want to be so resolute.
Yo,
in
this episode
philosophies.
is titled "Maybe."
Yeah,
with Tim.
Don't title it. We have all the answers.
Possibly? Question mark.
Yeah, but I think it is about being a student in a sense, like posturing yourself to be teachable.
Yeah.
Don't run from confrontation. But if you're submerged in like, what is today showing me?
Absolutely.
Then I think you're just more conscious and you don't run from the scary things, and you look at the scary thing and you're like, I'm supposed to be here right now. And then when it's over, you're like, I needed that.
Yeah.
I had to go through that to have what I have today. Like you see these little memes, like think about yourself 5 years ago. No matter what you're going through right now, think about yourself 5 years ago. You would kill to be here right now. That's circumstantial, obviously. Like life offers things that aren't. But in terms of like, if you're in a good space and you hear that, you're like, man, I got a lot of stuff going on. But you're right. 5 years ago, I wasn't doing any of this stuff that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, very grateful.
No matter how challenging it is, and it's good simultaneously. Like, yeah, that saying is true for me.
Yeah.
Like I would have given anything 5 years ago to be where I am today, because I've grown.
Yeah.
I've evolved. I've changed. I'm glad I'm not that same person that I was 5 years ago.
And the only things that defined you properly were the experiences that you went through and didn't close up to. Yeah. Didn't close your heart in resistance to that hard conversation with your wife or your kid frustrating you or the business not working, or this frustrating conversation about something in your shop or something like that, like the interesting part about staying open, is like, you you have eyes still. You know, like even like in Greek mythology, like I believe the name is Horus and Cyrus, maybe I might be butchering that, but it's a story about this leader, this guy that develops a kingdom, and then as he gets older, he begins to willfully become ignorant to the problems in the kingdom, and then his son is essentially the son that says, there's a bunch of issues here, and he's like, shut up, kid, you're an idiot, I'm a man, I know what I'm doing, and the son essentially is the father dies and gets buried in the underworld, and the son has to go rescue his father at the underworld and then revamp the kingdom and stuff. And the whole point of the story is like, as you grow old, you lose eyeballs, and the youth of the world is the eyeballs. That's a really interesting concept that I didn't ever consider until recently. That, like, we look at kids, no one knows what's going on in the world except for kids. You know?
Yeah.
Like, no one knows what's happening.
Yeah.
No one knows what's important and what's growing and what's failing and what's cool or what's not. You know, not just on a trend situation, but like when do you have the opportunity to sit down with a kid who's like 15 and go like, what's going on out there?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening right now? And they're like the people that can say what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think about like an old man fishing, you know, like you fished for years and you're so good at fishing. And if a kid shows you a better way to bait a hook or a new piece of technology, take it.
Yeah.
Take it.
I think that's true in some regard, because as you're saying that, like raising kids, what I find to be funny is life is very cyclical. Like, we know that trends come back. Like, we both have mullets.
We do both have mullets.
Yes.
Maybe
I was born in 87 and I was a child with a mullet. And all the guys, like I just saw an old picture of my dad's family, and there were mullets in there.
Yeah.
My uncles would not rock mullets right now.
Yeah.
So to your point, like maybe there was a way of doing things that like in this pattern is the new way, and it just doesn't work for that person anymore, or maybe they've learned something that we don't know, and they say like,
one day,
yeah, it all comes and goes, and I'm just gonna do it this way. I'm gonna fish this way. Like, I don't need the bait unless it's involving technology. But like, I look at kids, especially like middle schoolers, and they're into the same things that we were into in middle school.
RuneScape
and Pokemon, and just like it's all the same stuff. Yo-yoing, like they all act the same. But what I observe in the younger generation especially is that they feed off of emotion. And I think we condition ourselves to be more jaded as we grow older, to not be sensitive to like
the nuanced feelings.
We're not good, are we? Or like, that didn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's especially children, like young kids. They only feed off of your emotion. They know that something's wrong if you're letting them know that something's wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's like specifically what you were saying, but my mind went there to say like, the younger generation is probably more in tune just because they're more aware. And
two, like there's a certain concreteness too that I think, and this is not so much, this is more conceptual and interesting thing to put into your mind and just give it a spin and see how it affects your life. Because it's not like what I'm personally experiencing right now is this concept, but I do think it's intriguing. Is that, you know, as you learn something, it's a delicate art to not become fixed in that concrete. You know, like to climb a ladder, to embrace the next step, and then be ready to let it go as you climb. You know, like kids, or for instance, you know, like if you take a psychedelic drug, you know, not promoting the use of psychedelic drugs on this
for
platform.
Instance, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, if someone doesn't choose to engage in that.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, you know, reportedly, what happens in the literature that I read from a distance is that you begin to, wait a second, I'm seeing not Tim, I'm seeing what I think Tim is.
Yeah.
Wait a second. So I've interacted with Tim enough to create a database of Tim, which also is dated. Like it's, you know, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and even further for people you've known longer.
Right.
And so, wait, I'm looking at those people, or these people, or this group, or Christianity, or the church, or not, or the government, from like things that are like not, they're like a frame of lens that I look at that was created in a time for a certain purpose.
Yeah.
And like, wait a second, if I take this off, again, according to the literature, not a personal experience at all, then I can see with new eyes, I can see the world like the Bible says, you know, not to directly link psychedelics and scripture together, but if you want to go there, I'll go with you. No one can see the kingdom of God lest he be born again.
Mm-hmm.
A newness, you know, God makes all things new, like a fresh.
So what's our concept of newness? It's a child.
Yeah. Brand new life. You popping your head up out of water for the first time, seeing it all. Yeah. And then once you start learning it all, and I don't know, this might be wrong, just far out here. Once you start learning it all, you start to die, because you start to get your story so you can tell it when you're on your deathbad. Yep. But when you're just wide open, looking at it all, going, what is it? And you're full of wonder, naive and stupid, but full of wonder.
Yeah.
That's a cool. You want to derive if you can be inspired by children in that regard, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, the Bible references having a childlike faith. Yeah, like that's how we're supposed to approach our faith, which is sort of synonymous with what we're saying. Because when I look at my almost 3-year-old little boy, like he is wide-eyed. He would quite literally trust everyone. There isn't this like negative experience yet that he's had, or that we've shaped for him for interacting with humans. Yeah. Because we do that for each other. Mm-hmm. Our parents did that for us. We created a perception of things that are good, things that are bad. I think that innately there is a difference between good and bad. But in terms of approaching life and being a student and evolving, it's kind of like the progression of a child. Like you're learning constantly. Yeah. If you deposit negativity and, you know, this narrative or somebody's out to get you or these people are bad or whatever,
threat, hell,
you start to form an opinion and you digress. You slowly die into the brand of human that, you know, your parents created, their parents created, politics created. Because again, we work hard to identify with things.
And to exist, you take on an identity. Yeah. Like you're in a body. Yep. You know, if you're a soul and you're in a body, you're occupying this thing and you're not, you know, what you aren't. Yep. So you have a limit. Yep. You know, there's like a theory that to exist is to create a limit. That's why, like, you know, like you can't say, like, there's a theory for the reason God doesn't exist is because in order to exist, there has to be a boundary to it. You know, without a separation from what it's not, like non-dualism or something. Yep. But yeah, the art, that's why I say it's a freaking art, like a beautiful practice to say, I want to respect the things I've learned in my life. I want to open my heart to the new experiences. I want to continue to see the world in the newness that it is, so that I don't treat every cycle of summer and spring, fall, I don't treat them to be the same. Yeah. I try to keep a freshness to see the next customer that comes in my business with love.
Those things are happening. It happens in front of you. But I think, you know, maybe another way of saying it is like, it's okay to be in beta mode constantly. Like my software is evolving. I think you told me this one time, actually. Really? I think you said something like, we were having a similar conversation at the shop. I'm pretty sure it was you. And it was like, we are our parents with updated software.
That's good.
Because if you reference it like to the older generation iPhone, you can't update the software. It's capped out. It's antiquated. Unless you buy a new one, then it can keep evolving. Yeah. And you could even go a step further and just be in beta. Like we're testing it out.
That's a beautiful place to be.
It has bugs. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it also has new features and it's really brilliant. It's ahead. So living in that space of like, I know it's going to be challenging. It's not always going to work, but it could be really good. It could also be really bad. You're somewhere in the middle and you're conscious of both outcomes.
But then you develop, you say, okay, it could be really good, it could be really bad, but it doesn't make a wash and go, well, what do you do? Well, you go, well, there's stories, there's mythology, there's religion, there's nature that even can direct your attention to say, if I don't innovate, if I don't develop, I die. You know, and if in some regard, it's like the idea of saying, if I don't die, if I don't kill the current software to develop the new, then I will ultimately lose my sight and fall out of relevancy. Not unlike I'm on TikTok and I'm popping right now because I'm not, but but I will lose touch with reality. What's going on? I won't imagine having a dial-up internet connection desktop and understanding what TikTok is. You know, you're like, what is?
Yeah, I mean, hearing all of this, I think it is purposeful to be inspiring. However you're doing that, it doesn't have to be on trend. But if you're taking steps towards doing something, you're gonna inspire somebody else. You're being purposeful. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just, I don't even think about it. I don't know how it came across. I'm not thinking about being on trend or being relevant in that term, but I mean like being aware of what goes on. Like if you're in a relationship and the last relationship you were really hurt, let's say a couple of relationships back, you were really hurt and it's caused you to be very hypervigilant and mistrusting. Well, you're in a relationship potentially, for this example, with someone who is a very high quality person, thoughtful, considerate, trustworthy. They're a human being, so it goes without saying that they are imperfect, but they are someone that you have there's a lot of potential to build a beautiful life. They're a great partner, but you don't get to experience that. You're not in touch with that because you're still operating from a trauma, from a past experience that, with a lot of sensitivity, that's a very nuanced conversation about traumatic experiences and processing, and much respect to that. The concept though is that are you experiencing this relationship? Are you experiencing through the lens that you developed as a reactive mechanism to the last difficult experience you had? Yeah. And maybe the strongest thing to do is to understand why you built that and understand what the motivation is for it, and to feel the pain that you felt and to grow stronger and not as thick-skinned. Yeah, I mean, I think that is just the process in life. Talking about being intentional and growing and learning and evolving, how that plays into religion, how it plays into, if you choose to get married or monogamous with a partner or whatever that looks like those things are hard. And the reason why they are is because they take work. And my dad always used to say, I'm sure it's from a million other different things, but anything worth having takes work. Yeah. You can't just roll into life and be like, cool, this is all just handed to me. You have to work for what you have. Yeah. And not to go, down a rabbit hole, but specifically relationship. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like the past 5 years, and so then I'll reference Claire and I in December will have been married 14 years, which I'm reaching that point to where now I hear myself say that and I'm like, that's a long time. Yeah. Really awesome. You don't just do that, especially as my age demographic would categorize me as a millennial. Yeah. I have a ton of friends and acquaintances and people that I've known that got married, they've been divorced, they're married again, they're not married, whatever it is. And not to say that that's a negative, but it's more so to highlight the fact that the reason we still are is because we have worked at it intentionally. And I think I'm at a place right now where we've got a really good team at our coffee shops, a few of which are married, they're younger, newly married, and it's given us a bit of an internal platform to we're more than your employer and your coworker. You can lean on us, or we can hopefully inspire you in ways that's it's not impossible. Yeah. In whatever version you're striving for, the movie Up, to reach that catalyst of old, happily married. You can sense it in the movie. Pixar is brilliant. Yeah. You don't just get there. And so I can remember highlights where things would come up because we're two human beings that disagreed, and we would just sweep it under the rug. We're not confrontational. We don't really argue. We kind of want to live this mantra of peace before conflict, and that's good until you reach the point to where it all just comes out billows under the rug, and then you're confronted with it, and you have to address it, because I think life puts you at crossroads most often. You can either go here or you can go here. Here is a harder path, but it's the most rewarding path.
Yeah, if you take so long and just to clarify a point that I think would be helpful for listeners, to take so long of not dealing with conflict, the communication skills, if lacking to deal with the beginning budding of conflict, the communication skills needed to address and resolve and to deal with those are this, and then the communication skills needed to deal with that, plus the resentment and the long things I blame you for because we never dealt with it, are much more. And then so if your accounting knowledge at the beginning of opening your small business was not that great, well, after 5 years of not filing tax returns and not understanding a balance sheet and not understanding asset, like you're going to be overwhelmed. So better to
with something much bigger.
Better to take care of it. And the motivation for that, it sounds like, and I'd love to talk about this with you, is deciding that this relationship is meaningful to me. And that's one of to peel it back to the relationship difficulties that I feel, if you're cool with that, is the inspiration for it has been a recent growth of the importance of developing a meaningful setting in life. You know, like I've had a really, really awesome life. I've had a lot of freaking fun and freedom, and I've been successful and had plenty of opportunities for awesome experiences and tons of happiness and tons of peak moments. And I don't want to say to anyone, don't enjoy those and don't pursue those, because do. But at some point for me, it started to feel I had a really difficult experience about a year and a half ago where I thought I lost my best friend. I thought he died, and there was just destruction of my personality, just a grief that just overtook me. And I remember looking at Lauren during that day and seeing it could make me emotional talking about it, such value in the presence that she offered me, and the soothe and the there and the being held. And I thought, that's notable, something about that. And then I woke up at 4:00 in the morning about 3 months later to take my dad to the hospital for a surgery, and I was so irritated to have to be up at 4:00 in the morning. And I don't get up early. And as I walked with my dad, as he was limping, he had this thing wrong with his foot. He was getting a surgery for it. And as I'm walking him into, the doctor's office at 4:00 in the morning, I have this really interesting feeling. I don't like that I'm up at 4:00. I don't like the fact that I'm having to come back in 3 hours. I'm exhausted, But something about taking my dad to the doctor, something about being there for him and supporting him the same way he's cared for me, and like I said, it makes me even emotional to think about. Something about that was deeply, could not mistake the amount of purpose and point to that experience, taking care of my father. And that's what has begun to inspire this collection of meaning of going happy, great. Maybe before you get off the train of life, maybe you don't know what the future holds, and actually you do know that it holds death and sadness and triumph even. And maybe sharing a beautiful triumph with someone who's been there with you and understood the nuances of it, because I've had multiple relationships and partners, and I tend to move pretty quickly in that regard. And that, how much can someone celebrate with you about having success if there's not a lot of seeing the progress. And so my reason for looking inwards and going, why do I feel afraid of a partner? Why do I feel, even recently using the term, that I feel that I'm afraid of love? The only reason, the motivation for that, is because I want to have a meaningful life, and I see as having a partner in that for whatever time period to be a very valuable thing to pursue. Like my business is valuable, and it's not make me happy. It doesn't, Like my business doesn't give me a lot of happiness because it's not new, it's not invigorating. It kind of runs and it makes me money and it does what it does. And I don't want to be blind to the depth of value that having a successful company supporting you and funding your life is.
Yeah.
By chasing, you know, we all meet people in the business world that are serial entrepreneur beginners, and it's whether they're successful in it or not. Well, I'm talking specifically about the people who aren't successful in it. It's the high and the rush of creating something new.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes you really excited and makes you want to stay up all night for, you know, 6 months to a year. But then after that, your financial situation, your emotional health, mental health, physical health, relational health, spiritual health, your well-being is like taking a hit from it.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that's, like I said, it's many layers, but I appreciate you listening.
Yeah. I think what stands out to me specifically is just what you've acknowledged that you want versus what you feel like it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's something that, you know, either you're aware of or you haven't unpacked yet that's desensitized you to the idea of what love is and your pursuit and desire towards that or not. Like, I don't know if this has any meaning whatsoever, but you mentioned feeling like having a moment with your dad at a very inconvenient time.
Yeah.
I've become hyper aware that memories are not made in the mundane, in the routine. Memories are made when you make a conscious decision to do something. Like, it doesn't all have to be spontaneous, but I think the highlights of life happen at odd, like, oh, we were supposed to go here, but we changed plans and ended up doing this, and it was the best night ever. Like, you have those moments the same way that, like,
disruption and
I wanted to be in bed. Yeah, exactly. But it stands out to you because it allowed you to feel an emotion that otherwise you wouldn't have felt.
Yeah, that's really
so
good.
That's sort of like, I've told you about the Pixar movie Inside Out, right?
I love.
You remember talking about that? Yeah, I told you to go watch it because it's
you
mind
did.
trip.
I ate a really strong edible and watched it, and I thought I reached the pinnacle of emotional understanding.
But isn't it weird how like a kids movie, like tells a story of how we function, like our core memories.
Yeah.
And those
absolutely.
things don't happen until it's like out, like the little girl moves away. She loses her best friend. She goes to a new school. It's all things outside the norm that you're like, wait a second, this is uncomfortable.
It's what shapes you.
Yeah. You embrace it. And that's why I think, like, I don't know that I've vetted this definition, but I think love is a choice. I think it just is. And I think if you choose to pursue it, then the work and the you know, the deposits that you put into how, like, it's hard, it's not always fun, like, you reap those benefits down the road with those memories.
Yeah.
And having that person that, like, you know, people get hung up on love being physical, like an attraction, or like, you know, this transactional thing of having sex or making a lot of money. Like, it's all built on false pretenses that don't always happen. But when you choose to pursue that person, I think you reciprocate the feeling of love. The same way that, like, you know, our parents have us, whether it was a conscious choice or not, we're here. And if you have parents that, you know, they were present and they raised you, like, that was a choice.
Yeah.
Obviously they weren't gonna, you know, choose the latter, but like dragging you through, like my mom, they're still parenting me. I'm 35. You know, I didn't hit 18 and they're like, all right, we're done with you. They're choosing to navigate life with me, which creates a reciprocated love and those memories and those meaningful moments where you reflect and you say, like, wow, how could somebody love me so much? The same is true for me and my wife. It's like we choose each other, and it's not always easy. But I think if you're committed to that, it can be easy. It can be enjoyable when you're not trying to, like, you know, read the writing on the wall all the time, or like red flags or whatever. It's like we're all flawed, right? We all need to shower. We all like different things that would make us unappealing. Like we have to stay on top of that and not just think like, you know, Braxton, you didn't hang the moon. Like you're not God's gift to men. Even some men might think you are, but some women might think you are. But like when you are with a person, you're going to be annoying. You're going to be, you know, you're going to not do dishes or you're going to say stupid things. But if you're committed to understanding that and even in conflict, say like, hey, what you said, that hurt me.
Yeah.
Or like, I didn't like the way you worded that, or I didn't like the way like you were short with me. Like, can you explain that?
Yeah.
Or you've been really, you know, quiet or distant or cold. If you just let that stuff happen, I think people end up married for a long time and they were unhappy for the majority of it.
Yeah. You know,
versus addressing it. And then you say like, oh, that was monumental. You know, we addressed this big thing, we worked through it and moved past it, and we're better because of it.
Yeah.
Core memory.
It developed a sense of team.
Yeah.
You know,
that's in that let me interject. I think relationships that work, they view each other as equals, no matter what. Yeah. I see a lot of couples.
Respect.
Yeah, they give it up because they think that you're playing a role. Your role as the husband or the wife is this, and this, and you just assume, and then you let too much time go by, and you're like, oh, we're not a team. Yeah, we're not in this together.
Renegotiating responsibilities and things.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you talking in so much length about the qualities of your experience with love and relationships. It helps me to just hold my view against yours and see the ways that your story can be inspirational. The one interesting takeaway that I have from that is my obstacle that I've recently begun to face has been my inability to let someone be good for me. Growing up, I had so much fear that I would choose the person that God doesn't want me to be with. I would choose the wrong person. I remember in 6th grade having a crush on a girl named Lindsay. Love you, Lindsay. And praying in my bed, you know, through tears that God would please show me that she was the right one for me. Yeah. Because I was so afraid that I would choose the wrong person. And that fear, I think that the defense mechanism that I created for myself so I would never make the wrong decision was to make sure that no one was ever the person I would want to choose. And so I created such a harsh standard for myself that falling in love was not an option because, and I'm even solidifying some of these things, I'm talking about them, so I appreciate the space for it. Falling in love wasn't an option because it was the way to ensure that I chose someone, and that made sure that I had to risk choosing the wrong person and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I have just recently, even in my relationship, me and my partner have been talking about closing our relationship, and that has caused a lot of that has encouraged a lot of introspection in me, willfully and intentionally. So not through obligation, but through desire to be with this person and to see that there are unmet needs that I feel, and it's not being met with a freedom of sexuality with whoever, wherever, in an open relationship, in a non-monogamous, consensual open relationship. I think maybe the feeling that I have is to enjoy intimacy deeply and freely. Yeah. Maybe I don't enjoy intimacy freely because of these shameful constraints around it. And so maybe my exchange for freedom, because I still want freedom, is instead of freely enjoying what I have, then I'll just put no limits on what I can get. And it's been inspirational. It's like maybe satisfaction is not in the next. Maybe there's some aspect to, like me and my girlfriend did a garden for like 8 days. And there was a lot of positive emotion towards that garden, and I really cared about it. Yeah. And I can go down Shonda Road and get anything I want. But the idea of growing our own potatoes was like the same thing about my dad taking him to the hospital. There's like this deep sense of like a decision that creates like a halo effect, right? Towards meaning, towards like you pick your dentist and then you want everybody else to use that dentist so you can feel better about your decision. You like pick the person you want to be with, and then your mind is like, that's who we got. All right, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna fall in love with this person.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, it's like I look forward to feeling myself, because I do feel myself falling more in love with my partner
Mm-hmm.
for the first time since 9th grade.
Yeah.
And it's
You
really
just
cool.
have to allow yourself the space to do that.
Yeah.
Again, I think acknowledging that something bad can happen doesn't mean that something bad is going to happen. Like, we could walk out of here and, you know, get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not expecting that to happen. Could it happen? Maybe. The same way that, you know, my spouse can do something that lets me down.
Yeah.
But I think if you reference the garden, like, if you're on the same page, like if the two of you are really just rooting for those potatoes to take off and be, you know, healthy, then it's less, gosh, how do I want to word it? It's like your arms are linked, like you're shoulder to shoulder and less like facing each other in a, like, okay, don't do anything to screw this up. It's like you're projecting together, hoping for the best.
Yeah, seeing yourself as a team to embrace and conquer obstacles together that might impose on the relationship.
And a lot of people don't get that, and I was one of them, because you know, while in my relationship there has historically not been a lot of conflict, the typical things, you know, I want this, you want this, different needs not getting met, because we are selfish.
Yeah.
We're primal. We're not meant to be like thinking of others first. And I do still think like you're thinking of yourself first, because if you're taking care of yourself, your mind, your body, all of these things, it offers you margin to care for other people.
Absolutely.
So we went to a therapist together, and we just got really lucky, because I know I have a lot of acquaintances and different people that are like, we tried therapy, it didn't work, or it was just a bad fit, or like my partner goes to a different therapist, I go to this one. And even like horror stories of people finding therapists that just like gas them up. Like, you know, yeah, you're doing a good job, you're right. And almost feeling like vindicative towards their partner.
Yeah.
But like we hit the gold mine and found somebody awesome, and went through a series of sessions that it was just so encouraging for us to hear, like, no matter what it was that we were going through, a mediator essentially saying like, I hear you. The crazy thing is that you both want the same thing. You both are wanting to end up at the same goal, but you're taking two different paths. If you can align and communicate through whatever that journey is, you already know you're going to end up here. Just be on the same page.
90% of the conflict already. We have the same outcome desire.
Yeah. So to me, that's the definition of intimacy. It's being on the same page, the same team, because I don't think like young boys would hear like that word means two human bodies touching. Like, I want to be intimate with you.
Yeah.
But I think it's more so communicating through the daily steps of life to understand, like, where's your head at on this? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Like, that's knowing somebody intimately, allowing the space for people to, you know, it's sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have that, then I think you miss out on the joys of life. Because I think ultimately, like, and I'm sure you have too, you watch people dissolve. Like, it's not, I mean, like, I don't know, to be explicit, I've had friends say like, well, the sex was really good and, you know, it was a lot of fun, but then this, and this, and it's like, you probably could have had that, but you didn't allow for that opportunity.
Yeah.
You were focused on one thing. And we all know that phases eventually.
Yeah.
But I think having true intimacy with a person, knowing that you're wanting to achieve the same goal, and that goal could change. But I think it's important to me to make sure that, like, hey, if, you know, you're seeing this different and maybe you see beyond that goal, like, let's stay aligned.
Yeah.
Help me understand, help me see beyond. And I feel like, you know, my personality offers for that a lot in our dynamic. Like, I'm always looking ahead. Like, this is where we are. This is where we could be. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I think it's really, really awesome that you guys attended therapy together.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you talked about that, man.
Yeah.
It was, I think there's a diminishing stigma around therapy that the more people talk about it, it's nice.
Oh, dude.
You don't want a therapist that gasses you up. You want someone that listens to you, hears you,
Yeah.
and then helps you understand maybe that just helps to reflect to you, hey, is this what you're trying to figure out?
Yeah.
And then lead you on your way.
Well, I guess it's kind of the premise of this conversation now. Like, if you're not subjecting yourself to some sort of opposing opinion or differing opinion, like, you could go down the path of, like, life is great until somebody says, like, hey, you should do something different with that. Mm-hmm. And then maybe it's the right time, like, for us to make it to the point of, like, we should go talk to somebody. We were in a good spot. It wasn't like it was like, if we don't go talk to somebody, then this is going to blow up. Which
is also the best time to start therapy.
Perfect.
When you're in a good spot, because then you're like, you have a margin, a positive emotion to expend towards, or to invest in developing skill sets that create a better, relationship, and like when you're fighting and it's argument over sides too. It's like not the time that we're really in a state of trying to learn.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I think obviously seeing somebody licensed is beneficial, especially if they're not your friend.
Absolutely.
You like pay them for a service. But I think
they're good at it.
And they're good at it. And maybe it's not the right fit. Go find somebody else. Don't give up just because it's like, well, and truly I hear more people saying, like, I didn't like that, mostly because you didn't like the feedback. Like, you don't like hearing that you're wrong, or you're going about it in a difficult way.
Yeah.
If you can filter that and say, hey, you know what? This isn't my wife telling me this. This is the therapist. Mm-hmm. It's probably true at that point. If they're both on the same page, you're like, I should change.
Yeah,
I'm not right. And then when you lay down that sword, you're no longer in conflict. You're not battling. You're like, actually, I hear you. I'm making an effort. And dude, so much space for love when you communicate with your partner. Like, maybe tomorrow you're like, hey, I'm kind of like in a weird headspace. I'm working through some things, kind of like I referenced beta mode, like, be patient with me.
Yeah.
I've got you, whatever you need, versus being like, standoffish or short or whatever. Like, truly your body is saying, like, I don't want this right now. But if you communicate what it is that you're actually going through, you realize that's what you need.
Yeah.
You need a partner in supporting you to work through whatever it is that is in your head.
Absolutely, man. One of the coming to a close with our conversation, I think that's a really good place to land it on, of how important communicating with someone is in developing a relationship. I harp on that all the time with these episodes of how do we live a beautiful life, being willing to say to your partner, being aware enough to be able to communicate on how you feel.
Yeah.
And then inviting people in on that, the way you describe intimacy is reaching past physical intimacy.
Yep.
It's funny as I think I'm the opposite. I think I'm really good with emotional and lifestyle intimacy and integration, but I'm really shitty at physical intimacy in terms of integrating my heart into the process of being physically close.
Yeah.
So I really look forward to integrating intimacy of the life into, physical stuff, which is kind of ass backwards for most people,
And it can be with people aside from your partner. Like, I think when you offer that to the people that you maybe love is a loose word, but like, if you do have that connection with a friend or a parent, or you're raising kids, like, it's hard as one human to give everything to everyone. I think you do have to be conscious of, like, how much of yourself can you give, especially being an employer, like you're running a business. You see a lot of humans that are looking to you for, like, whatever they think that you should give them. Being conscious of, like, hey, I have enough margin for this, whatever that is. And then maybe it's like one or two people that you have margin for everything. Being conscious of what you're giving to who, which is why, like, I know we're wrapping up, but I think these are the conversations that us as human beings can glean from. I think therapy is invaluable and very important, but if we as humans can give each other space and energy to have this sort of conversation, you leave feeling better.
Your relationships, your normal friendships become therapizing.
Yeah. I don't know anybody that's like, man, I just had a 3-hour conversation and it was all positive with so-and-so, and I feel really shitty after.
If they disagree with you, you're like, fuck that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was just a positive conversation and we talked for 3 hours, like, think about that. Man, positive conversation. It was 3 hours long. I feel like shit.
No, it's medicine, man.
You
love it.
You feel better. You feel energized.
Absolutely.
And even in the conversations that offer conflict, like, if you're reflecting on it, revisit it.
They cause you to engage.
Yeah, because most of our interactions are 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Whatever, 5 minutes tops. Hey, man, what's up? How's it going? Good, cool. See ya. So if you have these, then the next time I see you, it's okay for us to have a 30-second interaction.
Yeah, or not
because we've allowed for space to do this.
100%, man. Or even not even to interact. I've
Yeah.
always assigned that to be the ultimate pinnacle of friendship.
Yep.
Is when you can both walk by, you can walk into a store and walk out and not even say hello.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, we're cool, dude.
Oh, dude, I could go down there's a guy that said he doesn't like me. A guy that comes to the shop, I don't like him anymore. I heard this.
You don't talk to him?
Because I was walking into the shop and didn't give him any attention.
Yeah.
I was like, what a weird thing.
Yeah.
Because I think about you and I like you.
Yeah.
I think about most people that I interact with and I'm like, I like you.
Mm-hmm.
I might not be able to talk to you all the time.
Just didn't talk to you that time.
Yeah. I'm better off liking you at the start than being like, I don't like that guy.
100%, man. Can't take this personally. People walk by you, you know, they're going
Yep.
through the day. They're taking care of things.
Yep.
You know, so, yeah, man.
You
I
later.
really appreciate
Yeah.
the time today, man.
Yeah.
This has been, I've had a lot of topics today to talk about and just be able to chop it up and spend some time. And
For sure.
I mean, we're friends. We've
Yeah.
known each other. We've had conversations, but to be able to, I'm really grateful for the opportunity that we've had today to sit down and be intentional with getting to know each other more and sharing for our experiences,
Yeah,
gleaming,
sure.
as you said, from each other's experience.
Yeah. Maybe we can do it again.
I would look forward to that, man.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude.
Peace. Awesome, man.